They called it a strategic pivot. What they meant was, we're taking your work and pretending it came from someone younger. I've worked in logistics for 48 years. I've seen this industry change more times than most of my colleagues have changed their phones. These days, I'm a consultant. Technically retired, practically invisible. The kind they keep on payroll out of respect. A relic with a badge. They assumed I was harmless. But they forgot something. Age doesn't dull sharpness. It concentrates it. I'm Evelyn Kerr, 70 years old last month. I spent the better part of the past year developing a streamlined supply chain integration system for regional vendors, a solution that could save the company millions and finally align our fractured departments. It started as a quiet side project. No one asked me to do it. No one noticed I was doing it. But that's how you survive in an office like mine, quietly, with a notebook and a good memory. I shared the draft with my team 3 months ago. Just a framework, I said. I shouldn't have said anything, because last Thursday, I stood outside the executive boardroom as 3 of my junior colleagues, Kyle, Amanda, and someone named Braden, wheeled in a monitor, plugged in a flash drive, and began presenting my exact proposal. Verbatim. Same structure, same graphs, even the color-coded impact matrix I had sketched during a Sunday rainstorm over chamomile tea. And my name? Nowhere. Not in the credits, not in the acknowledgments, not even in the footnotes. I listened from the hallway as Kyle confidently explained his approach to network alignment. Amanda added how they had collaborated organically to address inefficiencies. Braden smiled like a man who thought charisma could replace competence. The executives clapped. The CFO leaned forward. The CEO nodded thoughtfully. And I stood still, one hand on my cane, the other holding the corner of my notebook like a prayer. People think betrayal is loud, but it's not. It's quiet. It looks like your own handwriting on someone else's screen. It sounds like your words coming out of a stranger's mouth. I went back to my desk, sat down slowly. My computer chimed, a calendar reminder, quarterly call with Ellis Group, 4 p.m. And that's when I smiled. Because while they were stealing credit, they'd forgotten something. I wasn't doing this for praise. I was doing it for proof. And someone else had been watching all along. Someone from outside these walls who'd seen my work, heard my ideas, and knew exactly who the real architect was. They were just waiting for the right moment, and it had arrived. I've had plenty of meaningless meetings in my life, the kind where people sip lukewarm coffee and pretend PowerPoints are revelations. But this one, the 4 p.m. with Ellis Group, wasn't that. They'd reached out months ago, asking for insights on regional freight optimization. I'd sent them a few white papers, some preliminary models, nothing flashy, just substance. And apparently, that had been enough. I dialed into the call 2 hours after watching Kyle parade my work like a magician, pulling tricks he didn't understand. My hands still trembled, but not from anger, from restraint. The line connected. "Evelyn," came a smooth voice, right on time. It was Daniel Vaughn, Director of Strategic Growth at Ellis. Sharp mind, quick voice, younger than my grandson, but with enough sense to listen when someone older speaks. He continued, "We've been watching the pilot developments at Midpoint Logistics. Impressive results. I assume that's your work?" I hesitated, then smiled. "Let's just say I planted the seeds." He chuckled. We figured as much. That's why I'm calling. We'd like to make you an offer. Not advisory, full leadership. Build your own team. Execute the rollout nationwide. My heart skipped. Daniel, you know I'm 70. I do. And I also know your work outperformed 3 major firms we benchmarked. I didn't respond. Not right away. I was busy picturing Kyle and Amanda back in that boardroom, high-fiving their way into oblivion. There's something you should know, I said carefully. My team here, they've taken credit for the model. The execs believe it came from them. He didn't miss a beat. Well then, it'll be even more fun watching what happens next. I laughed, a quiet, rich, grateful laugh. He continued, we want to go public with this initiative at next month's summit in Denver. We'd like you to present the full strategy on stage. You'll be introduced as the lead architect. I sat back. So that's what this was. Not just a new opportunity, a reckoning. You're asking me to show the world what I built and let them connect the dots? Exactly, he said. A pause. Then, will you do it? I looked around my cubicle. Beige walls, dusty fake plant, faded photo of my late husband holding our first grandchild. All the years, the silence, the underestimation, and now this moment. Crystal clear, hard-earned. Yes, I said, I'll do it. We wrapped the call and I sat there long after the dial tone faded. Outside, Kyle walked past my desk and gave me that smug nod, the kind people give when they think the story's already been written. But he didn't know this chapter wasn't his. It was mine. And the next scene wouldn't happen behind his back. It would happen on a stage, under lights, with my name on the screen. And he would be in the audience, taking notes from the woman he tried to erase. I didn't tell anyone at work. Not yet. It wasn't time. The chessboard was still shifting, and I'd learned long ago that the most powerful moves are made in silence. Instead, I kept doing what I had always done, arriving early, sipping weak break room coffee, smiling politely when people forgot I was in the room. It was oddly freeing, knowing I held a secret that could crack the floor beneath them. But the cracks had already started to show. The day after the boardroom stunt, Kyle stopped by my desk with a thin smile and 2 cups of coffee, both lukewarm, one clearly meant to look like a peace offering. "Hey, Evelyn," he said, voice coated in charm. "We're thinking of putting together a version 2 of the pilot. Could use your insights." I met his eyes, cool and calm. "Version 2? That was fast. You've only just claimed credit for version 1. He blinked. "I'm sorry?" I leaned back. "You don't have to be. I just hope you understand what you've set in motion." His smile faltered for a second, just enough. Then Amanda appeared, breezy as ever. "There you are, Kyle. We're late for the investor call." She didn't look at me. Neither of them did. As they walked off, I noticed Braden at the printer watching us. He looked pale. Not guilty, nervous. Interesting. Later that afternoon, I ran into him in the hallway. "Braden," I said. He froze, like a deer catching the scent of truth. "I hear congratulations are in order." He shuffled. "Look, I didn't know they'd cut you out. I just thought—" I raised a hand. "No explanations. But just so you know, not everything that looks like a win is one." He nodded once. Awkward, then fled. I went home early that day. My knees ached, not just from age, but from restraint. All I wanted was to shout, not for revenge, but for the truth to echo where it had been buried. Instead, I opened my laptop and got to work. The summit presentation was due in a week. Daniel had sent me a custom slide template, a private folder for assets, and a contract with enough zeros to make my old pension blush. I had already signed. I crafted each slide like a monument, clear, undeniable, elegantly sourced. Every graphic traced back to notes I had logged, dates I had documented, early drafts I had time-stamped and emailed to myself. If they wanted to challenge it, I was armed. And just before I shut my laptop for the night, I added one last slide, a title card. The Kerr Framework, Human-Centered Innovation in Regional Logistics. No footnotes, no co-authors, no apologies, just my name. It had been a long time since I felt seen. But I wasn't seeking attention. I was seeking justice, the quiet kind that doesn't knock. It walks in the front door, invited. The Denver summit was larger than I imagined. Glass towers, banners flapping in the wind, people in tailored suits rushing from ballroom to ballroom with agendas in hand and ego in their eyes. I'd been to conferences before, back when I wore heels and makeup and had a title that came with respect. But this was different. I wasn't here as a tag-along. I was the headline. Daniel met me in the lobby. He looked crisp and confident, holding a tablet and coffee he actually drank. "Evelyn," he said, smiling like someone who knew a secret and couldn't wait to tell it. "You ready?" "More than they are," I replied. He laughed. "We're in Ballroom C. You go on at 10. We're expecting full attendance, including," he tilted his head, "some familiar faces from your side of the industry." I raised an eyebrow. "From Midpoint?" He nodded. 3 of them, Kyle, Amanda, and someone named Braden. Of course. They'd come to claim the spotlight again, or maybe to bask in what they thought was still theirs. I felt no anger, just clarity. By 10, the room was packed. Rows of chairs filled with investors, analysts, directors. And at the back, just as Daniel said, stood the trio. Kyle was smiling. Amanda had her arms crossed. Braden looked like he hadn't slept. I stepped onto the stage slowly, carefully. I don't rush anymore. Not because of my joints, but because I've earned the right to take up space. The screen lit up behind me. The Kerr Framework, Human-Centered Innovation in Regional Logistics. Murmurs, then silence. I began. I walked them through every detail, the problem, the inefficiencies, the human cost of systems designed without listening. I showed how vendor trust and retention increased when we treated people as partners, not metrics. How logistics wasn't just about speed, but dignity. My voice didn't shake once. At slide 12, I noticed movement in the back. Kyle whispering, Amanda shaking her head, Braden pulling out his phone. At slide 18, I showed the original sketches, handwritten, scanned, dated from 8 months ago. Slide 21 featured testimonials from the pilot vendors, recorded interviews I'd conducted myself. And then came slide 25, the closing. Built by people, for people. Designed by experience, not ego. Applause started slow, then built. Louder, sharper. It wasn't just polite, it was real. I stepped back from the podium. Daniel joined me. He said, "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the lead of our national rollout initiative, Senior Partner Evelyn Kerr." The title hit the room like thunder. In the back, Kyle's face fell. Amanda's jaw clenched. Braden, he looked straight at me and nodded. There was no need for revenge. I'd already won. Not with schemes, with presence. Because when they tried to erase me, they forgot the most dangerous truth of all. You can't steal what someone is still holding. And I never let go. By the time I returned to midpoint the following Monday, the silence hit different. No one greeted me at the elevator. No small talk by the coffee machine. Just darting glances and the kind of hush that follows bad news no one knows how to deliver. They had seen the summit. Everyone had. The video had gone viral in our industry circles. The 70-year-old who just redefined logistics. LinkedIn was flooded with shares and comments. Some called it inspiring. Others called it disruptive. But no one called it forgettable. At my desk, I found a note taped to my monitor. Conference room 2B, 10:30. No signature, but I didn't need one. I arrived on time. Kyle was already seated, hands clasped on the table, staring down like a kid caught cheating on a test. Amanda sat stiffly beside him, her usual smirk replaced by tight lips. Braden stood by the window, arms crossed, clearly wishing to be anywhere else. My manager, Thomas, was there too. Gray-haired, tired-eyed, fiddling with his pen like it might solve the awkwardness in the room. He said, "Evelyn, please." I sat. Thomas cleared his throat. "I think we owe you an apology." Silence. Kyle didn't look up. Amanda blinked fast, jaw clenched. Braden finally spoke. "I didn't know you were presenting." "You didn't need to," I said calmly. "You all knew it wasn't yours." Thomas sighed. "Look, I don't know how things got so far. I should have paid more attention, but right now we need to talk about what happens next." I waited. He continued, "There's been a lot of chatter since the summit. The board is reconsidering project leadership and—" "You're worried," I interrupted. "Not because of what happened, but because people saw it." He looked up sharply. "That's not fair." "It's not unfair either. But don't worry, I'm not suing anyone. I'm not here to reclaim a title. I'm here to resign." Gasps! Even Amanda's breath caught. I stood. "I'll be joining Ellis Group full-time, national rollout, full creative control." Kyle's face crumpled. You can't just leave." "I can, and I will." Braden opened his mouth, but I stopped him. "One day, you'll understand something. Experience isn't just years. It's scars, wisdom, knowing when to speak and when to let silence expose everything." I turned to Thomas. "You let them run with my work because you assumed I wouldn't fight back. I didn't have to. The truth stood taller than any lie you allowed. He nodded slowly. No defense, just understanding, too late to matter. As I walked out, I didn't look back. I didn't need applause or validation or even acknowledgement. I had something better. I had my name, reclaimed, restored, untouchable. And as the elevator doors closed behind me, I realized something beautiful. They hadn't taken anything from me. They'd only freed me to take everything I'd earned. I didn't cry when I packed up my cubicle. There wasn't much to take. A framed photo of Henry and me on our 40th anniversary, a mug that said Queen of Coordination, and a small brass paperweight shaped like a bird, a gift from a vendor I'd once saved from a nightmare shipping delay. The rest? Memories, none of which I needed permission to keep. By noon, I was gone. No farewell cake, no signatures on a card, just a few glances from desks that now understood the silence they used to ignore. I walked out into the sunlight, bright and full, and breathed deep, long, like it was the first time in years I'd been allowed to. Ellis Group sent a driver to pick me up the next morning. I stepped into their office, modern, glass-walled, buzzing with focus, but not rushed. There was a steadiness here, a clarity in the way people moved. I liked that. Daniel met me at the elevator. He said, "Welcome home." I let him know it was home for real. "Let's not get emotional," I warned him, and he laughed. They gave me a corner office. I asked for a shared table instead. "I build with people," I explained, "not above them." He nodded, spoken like a true partner. The next few weeks were electric. I interviewed candidates for the new team, not just by resume, but by instinct. I chose people who asked real questions, who spoke of systems and people, who didn't flinch when I mentioned ethics alongside logistics. By week 3, we had a team of 12, diverse, sharp, hungry, but humble. I led the kickoff meeting with no slides, just a whiteboard and a story. I told them about the project I'd built in silence, about the betrayal, the summit, the boardroom I walked out of. And then I said, now we build something they can't erase. There was a stillness in the room, not fear, reverence. We rolled up our sleeves and got to work. Each morning I arrived early. I'd bring in muffins from a bakery down the street, leave sticky notes on desks with reminders like, "Don't forget to breathe," or "That diagram yesterday, brilliant." They thought I was being sweet, but it wasn't sweetness, it was strategy. Because people don't fight for metrics, they fight for what they believe in, what they feel seen by. And I wanted them to feel invincible. One afternoon, Daniel stopped by and leaned on the edge of my desk. "You know, I think we underestimated just how much of a storm you were bringing." I sipped my tea and smiled. Storms clear the air. He laughed. "So what do we call this phase of your career? A comeback?" I shook my head. "No, it's not a comeback. I was never gone. They just weren't paying attention. And now they would." Amanda blinked fast, jaw clenched. Braden finally spoke. "I didn't know you were presenting." "You didn't need to," I said calmly. "You all knew it wasn't yours." Thomas sighed. Look, I don't know how things got so far. I should have paid more attention, but right now we need to talk about what happens next. I waited. He continued. There's been a lot of chatter since the summit. The board is reconsidering project leadership, and you're worried, not because of what happened, but because people saw it. He looked up sharply. That's not fair. It's not unfair either. But don't worry, I'm not suing anyone. I'm not here to reclaim a title. I'm here to resign. Gasps. Even Amanda's breath caught. I stood. I'll be joining Ellis Group full-time. National rollout, full creative control. Kyle's face crumpled. You can't just leave. I can, and I will. Braden opened his mouth, but I stopped him. One day, you'll understand something. Experience isn't just years. It's scars, wisdom, knowing when to speak and when to let silence expose everything. I turned to Thomas. You let them run with my work because you assumed I wouldn't fight back. I didn't have to. The truth stood taller than any lie you allowed. He nodded. No defense, just understanding. Too late to matter. As I walked out, I didn't look back. I didn't need applause or validation or even acknowledgement. I had something better. I had my name, reclaimed, restored, untouchable. And as the elevator doors closed behind me, I realized something beautiful. They hadn't taken anything from me. They'd only freed me to take everything I'd earned.
The first article hit the following Monday. The woman they tried to ignore, Evelyn Kerr and the future of logistics. It was flattering, a bit dramatic, sure, but not untrue. By Wednesday, it was trending on industry forums. On Thursday, it made the front page of Supply Chain Weekly. Friday morning, I got a call from a business podcast with 2 million subscribers asking for an interview. I declined. Not because I was afraid of the spotlight. I'd simply learned to let the work speak first. But the headlines weren't just about me. They were about Midpoint, too. Articles started dissecting the company's recent talent losses. An anonymous quote from a former senior consultant, Braden no doubt, hinted at internal dysfunction, unethical credit grabbing, and a culture of ageist dismissal. That phrase stuck. Ageist dismissal. That's what they'd done to me. Pushed me to the edge of the meeting table, nodded politely when I spoke, then built careers on the scaffolding of my silence. But now the silence was gone. The calls started coming in from old colleagues. Some wanted to apologize. Some wanted a job. Some wanted to distance themselves from the ones who had betrayed me, as if neutrality had been noble. I responded to each one the same way. Thank you for reaching out. I'm focused on the future now. And I was. We launched phase 1 of the national pilot 2 weeks ahead of schedule. Vendor feedback was glowing. Turnaround times dropped by 30%. Partnership retention soared. One logistics chain requested to meet me personally, not the team, me. Said they wanted to shake the hand of the mind who actually understood what community meant in commerce. That one made me tear up, not because of the praise, but because they saw what I'd been trying to show for years. Business isn't just about speed, it's about connection. Loyalty is built where people feel remembered. I shared that quote with the team. They clapped, then went right back to work. One evening, as I was leaving the office, Daniel pulled me aside. "You've built something rare here." "I've built what they said I was too old to start." He smiled. "That's exactly why I'm glad you didn't let them finish your story for you." I thought about that on the ride home. How many stories get cut short because someone decides we're past our prime? How many voices go unheard because they don't come wrapped in youth? They thought I was done, that my years meant I had nothing left to say. But wisdom isn't quiet because it's tired. It's quiet because it knows. And now that I had the mic, they were finally listening. Not out of guilt, not out of pity, but out of need. Because the future they wanted had been living quietly in my notebooks all along. And I had just begun to open them. It came in a cream-colored envelope, hand-delivered to my assistant. Heavy cardstock, gold-embossed seal. An invitation from Midpoint Logistics. Annual Innovation Awards Gala, honoring legacy and leadership. My name was listed among the honorees. At first I laughed, a short, disbelieving laugh that startled poor Jasmine at the front desk. Then I reread it and realized it wasn't a joke. Thomas must have pulled strings, or maybe the board was trying to save face. After all, the headlines hadn't been kind to them. The rumor mill suggested they'd lost 2 major contracts since the summit. Morale was low. Kyle was on a professional development leave. Amanda had locked her LinkedIn profile. Still, an award. They thought a trophy could rewrite history. I could have ignored it, could have tossed it in the bin and called it closure, but something stopped me. I didn't want revenge. I wanted something rarer. Witnessing. So I RSVP'd yes. The gala was held in a downtown hotel ballroom. Chandeliers, white tablecloths, the kind of event where the air smells like expensive perfume and unspoken apologies. I walked in alone. People noticed. Some approached with cautious smiles, others whispered behind wine glasses. Thomas greeted me at the door, eyes a mix of gratitude and guilt. "Evelyn," he said, reaching for a handshake I didn't offer. "We're honored you came." I nodded. "That's good, because I'm here to be seen." The ceremony began after dinner. They went through the motions: service awards, sales achievements, Employee of the Year plaques. Then came the final category, the Legacy Impact Award. A hush fell. And now, the host announced, we honor a woman whose quiet brilliance shaped the very framework we are building our future on. My photo appeared on the screen. Applause. I rose slowly, walked to the stage with deliberate calm, took the mic, smiled, then said, "Thank you for this recognition. I accept it on behalf of every voice that was ever told they were too soft, too slow, too old, too much. I spent years in these halls, not waiting to be praised, just waiting to be heard. And now that you've decided to listen, I'd like to leave you with this. Legacy isn't what you remember. It's what you
almost forgot, but couldn't live without. Silence. Then a wave of applause, louder than I expected. As I stepped down, I caught Braden's eyes across the room. He looked at me like someone who had finally read the ending to a story he thought he understood. That night, I didn't bring the award home. I left it on a table near the entrance. Let them keep it. I had something better. My dignity intact, my story reclaimed, and a future no one else would dare write for me again.
Weeks passed. The gala became old news, replaced by quarterly earnings reports and some other controversy in the industry. But something had shifted, not just outside, but inside me. For the first time in decades, I didn't feel like I was catching up. I was leading. Ellis Group was growing faster than anyone predicted. We'd launched Phase 2 in 3 new regions. My team expanded. We added 2 new hires under 30 and 1 woman older than me, a brilliant logistics analyst named Miriam, who had been phased out of her last company. She told me, eyes sharp and steady. I didn't retire. They just stopped asking me what I thought. I smiled. Well, I ask, and I'll keep asking. We weren't just building systems anymore. We were building culture. One morning, Jasmine buzzed my desk. "You have a visitor. Says she used to work with you?" I assumed it was a vendor, but when I walked into the lobby, I found Amanda. She stood there, posture stiff, holding a small envelope. Her makeup was lighter, her expression softer. "Evelyn," she said, "do you have a minute?" I paused, then nodded. We sat outside on a bench under the shade of a flowering jacaranda tree. "I won't take long," she said. "I owe you an apology." I said nothing. I knew what we were doing. Kyle pushed for it, but I didn't stop it. And when I saw your name on that summit screen, I realized we'd buried something we didn't build. I'm sorry. She handed me the envelope. Inside was a note, handwritten, and a thumb drive. The note is for you. The drive, it's your original files. I had copies, backups. I didn't want to admit it, but I kept them. Guilt, maybe. I looked at her. I'm not here to shame you, but understand something. The damage wasn't in the theft, it was in the silence that followed. She nodded, eyes damp. Thank you, I added, tucking the envelope into my bag. As she stood to leave, she hesitated. You made me rethink everything, not just career, but how I treat people. You deserve to know that. And then she was gone. I stayed there a while, let the wind move through my hair, let the jacaranda blossoms fall into my lap like quiet blessings. I'd thought vindication would feel like triumph, but it felt more like peace. Because the truth, when it arrives, real, unforced, undeniable, doesn't crash in. It settles like dust after a storm. And in that calm, you can finally see what's been rebuilt. Not just the career they tried to erase, but the woman they couldn't. It's funny how people talk about legacy like it's something you leave behind, as if it isn't something you live, breath by breath, word by word while no one's watching. I used to think mine would be footnotes and spreadsheets, maybe a line or two in a retirement newsletter. Evelyn Kerr,
42 years of service, quiet, reliable. But now I know legacy isn't what they say when you're gone. It's what they finally understand while you're still here. 3 months after the gala, Ellis Group hosted its own leadership forum, smaller, more intimate, and entirely curated by our team. Daniel asked if I'd close the event with a talk. I said no at first, but then I thought of Miriam, of Jasmine, of the interns who hug on to every word I didn't even know I was saying. So I wrote something, and when the time came, I stood at the front of a glass-walled room, morning light pouring in behind me, and spoke without slides. There will always be someone faster, louder, sharper in all the ways the world claims to value. But never let that distract you from your edge. Mine was patience. Mine was presence. And when they tried to replace me, they found out what happens when you remove the roots of something still growing. We don't get to choose how others define us, but we do get to choose how we show up. And when we do, with clarity, with compassion, with the quiet force of experience, no one can write us out of our own story again. I didn't expect a standing ovation, but I got one. Afterwards, a young man, maybe 26, maybe brilliant, approached me and said, "I used to think power looked like dominance, but you taught me it looks like resilience." I smiled, not because I needed to hear it, but because it reminded me that seeds grow in silence before anyone sees the bloom. That night, I returned home to my little garden, the one Henry and I planted years ago. The azaleas were blooming late this year, bold, pink, stubborn things. I sat on the porch, tea in hand, and opened the envelope Amanda had given me weeks earlier. Inside the handwritten note was just one sentence. "You were never invisible. I just hadn't learned how to look." I folded it slowly, tucked it between the pages of my notebook, the same one I'd used to sketch the original system. Then I wrote 5 new words at the top of a blank page. "The next chapter begins here." Because it does. It always does. Especially for those of us who were told we were finished and chose instead to begin again. If this story moved you, if you've ever been underestimated, silenced, or replaced, and still stood back up stronger, subscribe to the channel. There are more stories waiting for you.